I've got a question. What happened to all the optimism in Stellar? Stellar has rallied massively after the DTC, so traditional finance, planned to tokenize assets on the blockchain, but now suddenly the price is coming back down. So what's happening here? Was this all just an elaborate pump and dump? Here's the news from the beginning of the month. The DTCC will tokenize assets and make them available on the Stellar chain. The average crypto retail investor got very excited. When I made a video about that news, it got 3.2 times more views compared to an average video on this channel. But now, with the recent video, things are slowing down again. So what's happening here? Hi, my name is Gerhard. I've been in the crypto space for the last 8 years. I hit my first million 3 years ago, and it is mainly through active trading, buying and selling altcoins, timing the market in general. My track record is available in the website down below. On average, I made 5.1% per trade over the last 170 trades. On average, I hold a trade for 27 days, and this is the chart. It starts 2 years ago. This is when I started to publish my trades in real time. And so I show this because I want to be transparent. Every single trade is logged. Every single trade can be verified. I don't know many others in the space that are that transparent. So what's going on here? We used to be at 30 cents per XLM. Now we are down to 19 cents. There is, of course, the area of the crypto space that you should rather ignore. People that call for $1,000 per XLM. Not everything you see on Twitter has value, but if you are using X actively, then feel free to check out my account over here. So this is @BitcoinStrat. Make sure you follow the right account. I publish regularly several data points, little shorts, things that are useful, and active commentary about what's going on with the market right now. So again, that's @BitcoinStrat. Now here is XLM on a long-term logarithmic chart. Now logarithmic simply means that we measure the percentage changes when we look at the vertical differences. So we don't look at price differences in US dollars, but at percent differences. This over here is 300%, but so is this over here as well. If you look at a linear chart, you don't get that. You get 1000% over here for a few pixels, but the same pixels at the top are just a few percent. So really we are interested in the logarithmic changes because that gives us an impression how much relative gain we can make at a particular point in time. Now this here, that's the DTCC pump and subsequent dump. And here's how that looks like on an hourly chart. But I think those US dollar charts aren't necessarily that useful because most altcoins, they just move in tandem with the rest. As in when Bitcoin goes up, when Ethereum goes up, most altcoins go up as well, and vice versa. What we're really interested in is outperformance. How much additional performance do we get by buying an altcoin over Bitcoin? Because in the end, that's a decision. Do we buy Bitcoin for our crypto allocation or do we buy an altcoin? And so this is the chart that actually matters. And those are the lines that we have drawn in the prior video on this channel as well. There was a very good chance that the DTCC pump won't last long. Long term, XLM tends to underperform Bitcoin. And every now and then we get those very quick rallies. Maybe those are even short squeezes, right? People that bet on falling prices get squeezed out by the market makers that buy up the supply and force liquidate those people. And then the market makers sell off their supply again. So maybe this was just yet another short squeeze that was triggered by some news, but that's maybe not the fundamental reason for the price appreciation. Those effects here matter. Over the last 8 years, XLM underperformed Bitcoin by 92%. You'd have more than 10 times more capital investing in Bitcoin back in the days compared to into Stellar. Now, why did Stellar underperform over all of those years? The reason is token supply. The demand couldn't grow as quickly as the supply, and the supply expands comparatively quickly for Stellar. At least it used to. The inflation rate for Bitcoin is only 0.8% per annum. That's how quickly the supply grows. And if the demand just goes faster than that, the price should go up. But for Stellar, that's different. In 2020, we had been at 20 billion tokens. Now we are at 33 billion tokens. A growth of more than 50% over the course of 6 years. Now, what's the relative growth going forward? Here are the numbers. 1 year from now, we will have 4.4% more supply. Then the growth rate gradually goes down. Still, this is roughly 5 times as much as Bitcoin inflates. Stellar has to outgrow Bitcoin in terms of adoption, in terms of demand, in order to do better than BTC. And it has to do so by 4% every single year. This is quite a threshold. Now, last year, this was actually achieved. Have a look at the total value locked. So the capital that's on the Stellar chain over time, measured in US dollars, this definitely grew faster than those 4 to 5%. Measured in XLM tokens, the growth is even a bit more consistent. The problem is that capital doesn't necessarily directly translate into usage. This here is the number of processed operations over time. It peaked in September of 2022 and since then tends to rather decline. Maybe it has recently stabilized somewhat, but the trend isn't really that great. That's different to, for example, Ethereum. Ethereum did grow over the years, much more than Stellar did. Bitcoin's number of transactions also grew. A lot of effort is being put into making Stellar more attractive. The number of newly created assets is back on the rise. And of course, if the DTCC follows through with their plans, this number would explode. But check out the number of payments over time on the Stellar network, or the number of trades on the Stellar network. Just because there's the product, just because there's the offer, doesn't mean that there's adoption. There are actually people using that product. That's always the biggest risk. Creating the product is easy, comparatively speaking. Getting the adoption is the hard part. And so we can see that from one rally to the next, Stellar tends to go slightly lower in US dollar valuation. Again, because of the token inflation. This is not true for the market cap. The market cap reaches new heights from one rally to the next. What's creating those rallies? I think it's at least partially leverage. In the last 24 hours, we had 18 million worth of trading volume on Binance. On the perpetual futures market, we had 130 million on CoinUp and 86 million on Binance. So much more trading on the perpetual futures, on the levered bets, on the derivatives market. A lot of bets on the price means that the price is being propped up using leverage because there are arbitrage spots between the spot market and the perp market. When a lot of people bet on the price and open interest goes high, that also means that the price itself goes high. So this is the open interest, and every now and then it spikes and then comes back down, but have a look at how this correlates with the price. That's now in yellow. When there's no more open interest, when the attention moves to the next asset, that's also when the price tends to follow. And the issue is that open interest has spiked at very similar levels to where it spiked before, is now coming back down again, and so the XLM price is simply following that decline of leverage. Check out the trading volume. That has also spiked at very similar levels with that recent rally. And usually it comes back down again. And trading volume, attention, and price, it's all the same thing, just expressed slightly differently. And so yes, it is true that with the recent rally, we saw a lot of liquidations on the short market. So maybe some market makers took that opportunity of the announcement to buy XLM very aggressively, liquidate everybody in the process, and now they're simply offloading over time. That's how I interpret the situation. Now, I like to always establish trading rules to figure out how to time a certain asset. So instead of just re-evaluating the situation based on the news, instead of drawing lines on charts, I think it's most useful to use simulations of buying and selling using different trading rules, and then look at what rules worked very well in the past and apply those rules in the future. That's how I've been able to achieve those numbers. And so let's do the same for Stellar. So we can, for example, use a moving average. We could be buying whenever the price is above the moving average, say that this is the positive trend, and we could be shorting, we could be betting on falling prices of Stellar whenever we are below the moving average. That's a very simple, straightforward strategy. The question though is, what is the best moving average? Is it the 100-day, or is it rather, let's say, the 200-day moving average that works better? Or is it maybe the 50-day moving average that worked the best? What's the best moving average historically to time the Stellar price? And then how well does that strategy work? So I've run the numbers using Bitcoin Strategy Analytics. That's the backtesting platform of this channel. We are optimizing a single indicator, the simple moving average, and we are going long or short on the Stellar price. We can do this for all kinds of assets. You can also add your own assets over here. But now we are talking about Stellar. And here is the result. On the x-axis, we've got the moving average duration. On the y-axis, we've got the annualized return. The horizontal line is just buying and holding. So if we use a very short-term moving average, the trading fees eat up all of the profit. If we use a very long-term moving average, we get closer and closer to just buying and holding. The optimum to follow the trend is this dot over here, which is the 12-day simple moving average. Now, how well did that work? Buying and holding Stellar over the time period would have given us 30% per annum. Using this 12-day simple moving average gave us 157% per annum. So this looks quite attractive. Also, our maximum drawdown moves from a painful minus 96% for buying and holding to something more manageable, minus 69%. And here is how the performance looks like over time. So we've got just buying and holding Stellar at the top. We've got the Stellar price here in gray, the strategy measured in US dollars in blue, and at the bottom we have the strategy measured in XLM tokens over time. So a quite nice long-term outperforming strategy. Where are we right now with that strategy? Here is the chart, the 12-day simple moving average. We have fallen below that on the 4th of June, and since then continue to decline. And I like this strategy, especially after those very quick rallies, because that tends to then be a good signal when the positive momentum turns around and we start to see capital outflows. So this happened time and time again. Once we crossed below that moving average, we saw lower highs subsequently. And so right now we had another one of those pumps. We have come below that. And so I would be extremely surprised if we were to see a Stellar price above 26 cents in the near future. I don't think we will see that. I think we will rather continue to see a deflation of the asset. And so those are the kinds of trades I follow. This orange area, by the way, that's the positions that we currently have open. So we did make some money with this recent crash. The current positions are blurred here on YouTube, but they're available once you're logged in. And again, every single trade can be verified. When we did the same for Terra Luna Classic, you can just click here on those dates. This is available for all of those different trades. And then we just click in. You can have a look at what was our reasoning when we entered the positions. So this was a short on Luna Classic. Again, after a massive rally, we waited for a death cross. So here we use two moving averages, not just one. That tends to filter a bit of noise. Then we closed the position once we got the golden cross, and that's then how we made that particular gain. Now, not every single trade makes money, but in the end, the long term matters, right? 5.1% for a holding duration on average of 27 days. I think that speaks for itself. If you don't like manual copy trading, then you can also set up the automatic copy trading. That's only available for the annual subscribers though. We are currently at 27%. Annualized this year. Last year we had 44%. I'm working hard to achieve again the 44%. This year is our performance chart. We are using exactly the kinds of strategies that were described in this video. We are looking for altcoins that are overvalued and then bet on them to underperform Bitcoin once the momentum slows down. So feel free to check it out. It's currently $125 per month. There's a 7-day money back guarantee. In case you don't like premium, just message me within the first 7 days and I will refund you. No questions asked. So yeah, I think that the trend in Stellar has turned around. The speculative capital is exiting. The open interest is coming down. I'd be very surprised to see a new high in the price. We have the announcement of a product. We don't yet have the product itself, and we also don't have the adoption of that product. And there are competitors. We can trade traditional finance assets on Hyperliquid with perpetual futures or on Ondo Finance. So Stellar isn't necessarily the first player in the game. If it's your first time here, feel free to subscribe. I publish here regularly. A like would be very much appreciated as well. It helps the channel grow. See you next time on YouTube or see you in premium. Link to that pops up here on the screen. Thanks for watching. Cheers.